This is the Heroic Voice, where I talk to comic book creators, people I've worked with, other interesting people, about the history of comics, superheroes, and the current state of the comic book industry. I also discuss current and upcoming projects, current events, and any other topics my guests might be interested in talking about. So subscribe and hit the like button. Help me grow this channel and promote indie comic book creators, publishers, and other people affiliated with the comic book industry. Your comments are appreciated. Get to it and leave feedback, good, bad, and otherwise. I am your host, Dennis Mallonee, writer, publisher of the Heroic Multiverse, where we spotlight good girls, bad girls, super babes, and superheroics in a classic, kind of golden agey style. Grab some snacks and enjoy. This is the Heroic Voice. Hi, we're here with the Heroic Voice. This is September 21st, 2024. I am here with a young writer and fan, comic book fan, Ray MacKay. He does have a Kickstarter coming up, and by the time this goes live, it will probably be up and running. So we'll include a link to that once we have it, and we're in the editing phase. As always, right, it would be a great help if you could like, subscribe, and share this channel with everybody. We need to get to the point where we can start getting some advertising revenue in and support this. We're getting there slowly, but we'd really love to speed that up. So please share this, let people know.
Will do. I will post it everywhere when it goes up, and I already have liked every single video I've seen, which is quite a few, and I'm already subscribed.
We do have quite a few up. We're just about to post some with Bob Greenberger, a former DC editor, with Tom Brevoort, who is in charge of the X-Men line now at Marvel.
Wow.
Those will be up by the time this goes live. Ray, it's a pleasure to meet you. We've communicated occasionally over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Tell us about yourself, about your writing career, about that Kickstarter. What project is coming up? Go, just
For,
plug
for
yourself.
sure. First off, thank you so much for having me on. It's a pleasure to be on the show. I really like watching the new episodes when they come out, so it's a bit of an honor to be on the show here.
Well, we're glad to have you. Thank you. So,
Is it too cliche if I say long time listener, first time caller?
it is cliche, but it's not too cliche. So
Okay, good to know.
please tell us about yourself. How old are you? How did you start getting into comics? What first got you interested in writing?
Wow. Well, hi everyone. I'm Ray MacKay. I'm a Canadian writer, college student, hockey player, and a massive fan of all things comics. I'm 21 as of a couple of days ago. That's
Congratulations.
actually why I asked to reschedule our previous meeting because I was doing something with my buddies for my birthday.
Ah,
Um, Sorry, what was the next question after that?
you
Sorry,
told
I'm a
us
bit
about
nervous.
yourself. Tell us what got you interested in comics. What got you keen on actually starting to write?
Wow. I mean, I've been interested in comics since about I could read, actually. When I was first born, a friend of my dad's gave him the first two volumes of the Superman Chronicles, which are the reprints of the original Siegel and Schuster Superman comics. So my parents would read those to me sort of as I was a kid, and I sort of learned to read from them. So I've been reading comics basically ever since I can read.
That's a familiar story. My mom would read to me when I was a little boy, not comic books, right? But I pretty quickly realized that those little funny squiggles on the page were what were telling her what to say. So
Yeah. It's a great way to learn. I
every
attribute
mother should read to her child. Absolutely.
absolutely. My mom, she actually read pretty much the entire. My mom is actually was a big influence on sort of the amount I read as a kid. Like she read the entire Nancy Drew series to me as I was growing up, and really encouraged me to read both like real books and comics, which was really great. Like you said, every parent should read to their child, and I think everyone should encourage children to read.
I agree. 'Cause she didn't read you any Hardy Boys?
She read the first three to me, and then I read those on my own as she read Nancy Drew to me. Sort of Nancy Drew was our thing, and I would read the Hardy Boys by myself. And it's funny, for Christmas one year, she got me the Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew sort of TV show on DVD. I'm not sure if you are familiar, where it's
I remember it. The
yeah,
actress who
Shaun
played
Cassidy.
Nancy Drew in that series was quite good. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember it scared me as a kid. There was an episode where they met Dracula, and at the end, there's sort of the guy who's pretending to be a vampire. They don't see his reflection in the mirror, and to me, I that scared me. I didn't sleep that night.
Oh my.
Yeah.
So, what got
Yes.
you? I asked this before, but let's go right into it. What got you interested in actually writing things?
Wow. I was always, I write comics now, but I used to sort of draw and write my own comics. I'm not that talented an artist, but I used to sort of write and illustrate my own comics. Actually, in my final year of high school, the year I graduated, we had this project called the Capstone Project, which was basically just a passion project that you worked on all year. And for it, I decided to write, draw, ink, and letter a 22-page comic just to see sort of if I could. And holy cow, it was hard.
Yeah, it is difficult. I mentioned
Yeah.
in an earlier interview that I submitted an illustrated story for an English class project. That was my first experience in writing and drawing. As you are, I'm not that good an artist, although I can do it. I'm just not that good. So it's a familiar story.
Yeah.
Comic books. Your dad
Right.
didn't read those to you. You presumably found them somehow.
Sorry?
Your dad did get that Superman book, right? But what got you interested in the periodicals, actually
Oh,
buying comics?
well, man, I
You
couldn't
don't
really
remember?
tell you the first time I went to a comic book store. Um, but I would have to assume it was sort of this thing where my parents saw I was reading comics and there was a comic book store 20 minutes away, so they just took me there sort of to see if I'd like it.
Ah,
I do recall in fourth grade, though, one of my teachers was really into comic books and he knew I was really into comic books. So he told me about Free Comic Book Day, and that is sort of one of my more memorable trips to a comic book store. I still have a few of the issues I first got, and I still remember what two of them were. And that was one of my first big trips to the comic book store, which would become a more and more regular thing as I begged my parents to take me.
so Free Comic Book Day was actually kind of successful in recruiting one fan.
Oh, absolutely. 100%.
Alrighty. Your Kickstarter, you have something coming up. Tell us about the things you've written, what you have coming up, in particular, the Kickstarter project, which will probably be live, as I said earlier, when this thing goes live.
Yeah, fingers crossed, right?
Yeah.
Um, well, talk about the Kickstarter first, and
Ah,
it's issue 6 of Alpha Red Comics, which I've written, and it will be launching on a Kickstarter, Indiegogo, and FundMyComic all at the same time on September 30th.
FundMyComic, I'm not familiar with. I presume by its name that it's specifically for comic books.
Yes, I will admit I'm not the person running the campaign, so I don't know the most about it, but to my knowledge, it is similar to Kickstarter, but just for comics.
Hmm. So
To my
presumably
knowledge,
it's
at
at
least.
fundmycomic.com or some such.
I believe so, yes.
I'll have to check it out. And I would, it's something I've never heard of. It may be something that people who are watching this have never heard of. So, don't just do Kickstarter. Go to Fund My Comics, go to Indiegogo, see what's there that you might like to support. In particular, Ray's project.
Thank you, thank you. And it's interesting. My boss at Alpha Red Comics, he just released like a long video about him doing the process of the Kickstarter kind of thing. So if he does something similar for the Fund My Comic, I'll let you know it might be of interest
That'd
for
be
other
great. If
people.
we get that link, we should include it down here, so that
Absolutely.
people can go see it. Um, Alrighty. They said that was issue 6. That would mean that there are other ones. Where can people find the earlier issues?
Um, they're all available, to my knowledge, on starcrosscomics.com. That would be issues 1 to 5, which were written and illustrated by sort of the head of Alpha Red Comics, James Nguyen.
Okay. Star Crossed. What was that? I didn't quite.
Star Cross.
Okay. So Starcross.
Yes.
Okay.
Issues 1 to 5 should be available there. And I think there's also a trade paperback that collects them, which is great. And issue 6 will be joining them on there after sort of the Kickstarter and the FundMyComic and the Indiegogo, I
I-
believe.
Is there anything else that you have written that people should be interested in?
Um, I mean, I like to think so. I've written 3 stories for Big Bang Comics, if you're familiar with them.
I,
Uh,
yeah, I know who they are.
yes. Actually, I have one of the issues
Show
here.
us.
Sorry?
Go ahead. Show us, please.
Oh, the first thing I wrote was an illustrated prose story for Big Bang Adventures issue 21, which was a Doctor Weird sort of prose story where he fights an evil wizard, which was just so much fun. That was the first thing I ever sort of wrote in the comics arena, and major credit goes to Gary Carlson, who took a big chance on me. I hadn't really done sort of any comic work whatsoever. I was just a big fan of Big Bang Comics, and I reached out and asked if there was any chance whatsoever I could sort of write something for him. And he said, no guarantees, but let's hear some ideas. And one of them panned out and turned into Dr. Weird, a
Uh,
duel with the Dead King.
You're in good company in that regard. The very first thing Stan Lee ever wrote was a text story that appeared, I think, in Captain America Comics #3 back in,
Wow,
yeah. So
that's amazing.
there are a
And
few people who started that way.
mhm. It's
Um,
a good way to sort of test the waters, you know?
mhm. Yeah, if you can write something in prose, maybe you can do a comic book story. It's a little bit of a different art, right?
Hmm.
Because with the pictures, the graphic pictures, writing should be at a minimum. I'm sometimes guilty of overwriting, right? There are other
Oh,
people who are guilty of that, but the best you can, let the pictures tell the story.
oh, I definitely am. Sorry, I'm blanking on his name. One moment. What's the name? I just watched your episode with him. The creator of the Southern Nights,
Henry Vogel.
Henry Vogel. I was just watching your interview with him where he talked about the possibility of turning the Southern Nights into prose because he couldn't find an artist for the uh, comics. And I thought that was a really interesting approach because I've written a few superhero prose stories after the Doctor Weird one for Oniric Comics. And it's really interesting because you sort of have to write the fight scenes as a you have to write the fight scenes and all the different details, and it's very different than writing a comic, but I would have to say no less rewarding. I'm very proud of the superhero prose stories I've written.
You never did show us the cover that you were going to show us.
Oh, sorry. So this is Big Bang
There
Adventures
we
number
go.
24, which I co-wrote the comic story for this with Gary Carlson. This was another idea I pitched to them, and this one got turned into a comic featuring Megaton,
Hmm.
which
Cool.
was it was really cool because the main villain here, Agent Orange, I came up with him in the back of one of my history classes.
Ah,
And
okay.
then a couple months later, he's fighting Megaton. It was very surreal, that process.
It must be a good character then if they liked it.
I
Yeah.
mean, I like to think so. I think he's interesting and scary, and he's got a great design by the artist Ron Williams. He's got this really cool. Sorry, I'm just gonna. He's got a
Ah,
very cool sort of yellow and orange costume and a very scary sort of gas mask like helmet.
well, maybe people should pick up some books from Big Bang.
Oh,
Not that they need me to plug them, but they do produce some good comics. I like their
they
stuff.
do, they do, and I've had the privilege of getting to sort of look over some of Big Bang's most recent stories before they've come out. So I got to read Big Bang Adventures number 28, which features the Shutterbug and Amphibia Man sort
Uh,
of before it came out. And this is a really cool issue where they fight an evil sort of a gator monster called the Red Gator. And I got a chance to read Big Bang 29, which features sort of a Thunder Girl in a very sort of classic story. Like I read this, and it's even got the chapter breakdowns that sort of those classic Stan Lee, Jack Kirby comics has.
yeah,
Like
well, Big Bang loves to do
yeah.
the callbacks to older styles. I mean, that's kind of their
Yeah.
thing. Right?
That's what initially drew me to them. I found one of their issues in sort of back bin, and it reminded me of like the classic Superman and Batman comics I grew up reading.
All right, let's shift
Yeah.
over, because this is like a half hour thing, and
Right.
I want to get to this before the half hour is up. The fan perspective.
Right.
You were reading comics when you grew up. Your first stuff was Superman, the original
Yes.
stuff from Superman. As you were into comics, you, I expect, would have had some favorite characters,
Mhm.
favorite series, favorite writers and artists. And then, at the very tail end of this, I want to get your impression of the heroic publishing stuff.
Oh,
But
all right.
talk about your take on the comic book industry in general, and specifically your experiences as you've developed as a fan.
Wow. Well, my experience of a fan, sort of what I grew to love, was shaped very much by sort of what I was exposed to. So I read those Superman comics, and they collect some of the Superman stories from World's Finest. And on those covers for the World's Finest, there's Batman, which led me to asking my parents for the reprints of the original Batman stories. So then I started reading the Batman Chronicles, and I was like 8 or 9 at this point. So, of course, I loved Robin because he's a
Really?
kid who gets to do all that stuff. So when I went to the comic book store, I started picking up issues of Robin's regular series. And oh, my aunt saw that I was enjoying all of these reprinted comics, so she got me the original Stan Lee, Jack Kirby Marvel comics, sort of the run from the 60s, which I
Particular
read.
titles or just in general?
Um, well, it's the Captain America one, so it's the initial run from Tales of Suspense when he shared the book with Iron Man,
Right?
and then it carries on into his own series. Like I think the third volume I have has those three Jim Steranko issues, which were
Wow.
a huge deal when they came
Beautiful
out.
work. Yeah.
Oh, they're
Have you ever
gorgeous.
read the original Simon and Kirby Captain America stories? You ever get a chance to do that?
I've read a few of them. I think they're really interesting. The Red Skull has never looked scarier than when he's drawn in those original issues. He looks terrifying.
One of the points, and Jack actually explained this to me once. He and Joe envisioned Captain America as a horror book before horror comics actually existed. Captain America was actually kind of a prototype for the horror genre. And every issue that Joe and Jack did, right, he was battling some sort of strange, bizarre, villain, whether it was General Fang or the Red Skull, or the Black Talon, right? They were creepy, scary villains.
Yeah, I mean, wow, that's fascinating. I'd never even thought of that, but he really does fight a lot of monstrous characters in those initial issues.
Yep. Yeah.
That's
Um,
fascinating.
okay. So let me ask you about your impression of the comic book industry. You're a young guy. You don't have a depth of background in it, but let's phrase it this way. What do you think the comic book industry is doing right? And do you have any sense that something is wrong?
Oh man. Ooh.
You got to think about that, huh?
Yeah, definitely I'll have to think about that. But I mean, I'm not really sure. I'm not sure I have the authority to say, oh, this is being done right, this is being done wrong. But I can tell you, like, whenever I go to the comic book store these days, I always have to stop myself from buying more. Like, I have to go through the shelves and I have to say, you can get one. You can
Hmm.
get one, and that's it. Because otherwise, I'd blow all my money on just everything.
So that being said, you clearly, are selective. What's your favorite?
Oh man. Ah, like my favorite comic book that I'll just sort of go to the most or sort of like out right now.
Um, Out right now?
There's two series I'm really enjoying just sort of picking up on the shelves. Um, I'm really enjoying it's called Batman Gotham by Gaslight: The Kryptonian Age.
Ah, okay.
And it's sort of a follow-up to that original
Original
Mike
Gotham, I guess.
Mignola
Yeah.
Batman sort of Gotham by Gaslight. And it's set a few years later, and it's sort of introducing sort of the Gotham by Gaslight version of the Justice League. And there's all these sort of like Lovecraftian horror sort of elements being sprinkled in. Like Professor Adam Strange is hired by Bruce Wayne to investigate this mysterious city that's been found in Antarctica. And when
Uh,
he gets there, it's filled with these monstrous creatures until suddenly a woman that speaks an ancient language and has these magical bracelets shows up to save him from these monsters.
cool. The
Whoever could
second
she
one, you said
be?
there were two. What's the other one you like right now?
Um, it's called Local Man, and it's really interesting to me because it's about this guy who is a superhero and he's been fired from his superhero team and he's banned from even like being a superhero because he signed a bunch of contracts. And it's sort of, have you read 1963 by Alan Moore?
I have not read it. I'm vaguely familiar with it, but
Okay, well, it's also very similar to sort of Big Bang, but instead of sort of the era that Local Man is homaging or sort of parodying is the 90s era of comics. Like all the characters have like two big muscles and pouches and big guns.
uh,
It's sort of think like how the guys at Big Bang grew up loving the Silver and Golden Age comics, and then they went on to sort of do their homages to it in the 80s and 90s. This is the guys that grew up loving the 90s image, like the Spawn and the Youngblood and the Savage Dragon. And now they're sort of doing their homage to it in a modern day.
all righty. That's great. Let's talk about your impression of what I do, what Heroic Publishing
Right.
is. Just, go to it, hit me with, with, compliments and criticisms, and just tell me what you think. I would like to get the perspective of somebody young. We've been interviewing, some of the old school guys, some people who have worked with us. You are, in fact, the first, 20 something that we've interviewed. So this is for Heroic Voice, something of a novelty.
Oh, well, thank you. Again, it's an honor to be on the show. Thanks so much for having me. Well, I'll start at the beginning, which is I came to Heroic Publishing through Champions issue number 5,
Hmm.
which I'll have to admit, I'm really glad you have sort of all these explanations in here of what happened in the previous issue because I was a little lost when I started.
Yeah, it was a 6 issue series.
Yeah, coming in at issue 5 was a bit of jumping in the deep end. But I just remember like being blown away by sort of the vibrant colors and the action and the sense that like even though this was issue 5, there was this massive world behind it. And I realized that's because it was based on a role-playing game, but I didn't realize that at the time.
Yeah, there's a lot of history there, a lot of history that we never even revealed in the comic books, but we do reference it occasionally. So
Well,
from
fingers crossed
there,
that you do.
yeah,
And I was really interested. I have to say, if I had to like pick a favorite character, it's got to be a tie. I think Giant is really interesting because I like the idea that that harness he has, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but this is my understanding. The bigger he gets, um, the less time he's powerful, for lack of a better word. Like his powers wear off after a certain amount of time, so he
that
only has.
was yeah, that was the original concept. It's in fact why Giant very rarely gets very, very big,
Right.
because there's kind of a limit to it.
Right.
Yeah,
I thought that was really interesting. It reminded me a lot of sort of in classic comics, like in the original Green Lantern issues, one of the big things is his power ring is always in danger of running out of battery. So it sort of adds an extra level of tension on top of sort of, oh, I have to stop this supervillain, but what if my powers give out? I thought that was a really interesting concept.
What was the other one? You said there was a tie.
Well, I believe he's called the Flying Fox now, but I loved the design on Foxbat
Yeah,
and sort of the devil may care. Sometimes he's a hero, sometimes he's a villain. I thought it was a really sort of interesting character, sort of in a morally gray area.
he's an adversary more than a hero or a villain. He makes it a point
Absolutely.
to take on various members of the champions.
Mhm.
He, from his point of view, what he's doing is finding out which of them are actually pretenders, fakes,
Mhm.
who don't deserve respect. He's trying to show them up. Um, but he will help, as you say, if there's something comes up, he will help the champions because he doesn't consider himself a bad guy. And if
Yeah.
there's danger, oh, I'm gonna have to do something. So, all
Yeah,
right.
like in this issue, he helps the champions. He helps the champions try and stop the villain from gaining the Hellfire Crown.
Yes, he did, even though he was responsible for the villain gaining the Hellfire Fire Crowd in the first place. Um,
Trying to clean up a bit of his mistake there.
sure, absolutely. Have you
Yeah.
followed it since then? What's your impression of the more recent material?
The more recent material, I'll admit, I'm a little less familiar with. Just sort of, it hasn't sort of gotten into my local shops, and
They don't distribute it through comic book shops. You can't
yeah,
make money that way. We only do Kickstarters, limited orders, digital distribution. So,
yeah.
if
Um,
people want to get the stuff, the best place to do it is either at DrivethruComics or on our own website at heroicmultiverse.com.
right.
But what have you read?
Oh man.
Because you got in touch with me. You said you wanted to, try your hand sometime at doing a story with some of the characters.
Man. Sorry. I know I've read them. They're at my parents' place back home, and I'm trying to
Oh,
remember
so you
which
didn't have a chance to do
issues.
any reference to them.
Yeah, I've got these, and I've got my issues of Alter Ego by Roy
Yep.
Thomas. But
Great books. Roy Thomas and
Ron
Ron
Harris.
Ron Harris. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I was originally drawn to these because they have all the public domain characters in them. I was really interested by like the use of like Captain Battle and the original Daredevil and the Claw, who I think is just such a great villain.
Yeah, yes. Claw's always a great villain.
Um,
Daredevil #1, right? Was had Daredevil Claw in there.
yeah.
It was a great thing. All righty.
Sorry, I
So,
totally forgot back there.
um, I think we pretty well covered the topics I wanted to talk about then. Again, we'll put that Kickstarter link up there as soon as it's available.
Thank you.
And any last thoughts, any recommendations you might want to make to people who want to break into the industry?
Um, if I could make two recommendations, it's number one, coffee is going to be very important to your comics career. You're going to need it. And this is just on a more personal note. Be kind. Take rejection well. Treat other people well. It's a small industry, and word gets around if you're maybe being a bit abrasive. And I think we could all stand to be a little kinder, you know?
Yeah.
And
Okay.
that's not an indictment of anyone. That's just I we're I think we should try to be as kind as possible, you know?
Let me suggest, not just being kind, but try to be yourself. Don't put on a pretense because people will see through that pretty quickly if you're trying to be someone you're not. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
Raymond,
I
it was a
also
pleasure to speak with you. Let's do it again sometime.
I
You'll
love
let me
that.
know when you have another Kickstarter coming up.
Will
We'll
do.
see if we can plug that for you. And
Well, and thank you.
thank you
Seriously,
very
thank
much.
you for having me
Thank you
on.
for being here.
Thank you for having me on, and thank you for creating some great comics, which I grew up loving.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Take care.